Hey everybody, this is LNP Games, and we are back to do some more RPG Maker tutorials. So, this is going to be the first video in a series of videos about events. We're going over what eventing is, what you can do with it, and then we'll have a particular topic we're talking about in each video. These videos are going to be a lot shorter than the plugin videos. I would say maybe like the average length of these videos will probably be like around 20 to 30 minutes, maybe a little bit more depending on the subject matter. They shouldn't be too long, and I probably should be able to crank these out every week as opposed to every 2 weeks because of that. So this video is more just kind of introduction into, again, reintroduction to what events are, how they're used generally, and like the interface for them. And the next one will be talking about a specific system. So in RPG Maker, events are what makes your game happen. Events could be automatic stuff like enemy encounters, or technically an event type of an event. They're like random encounters are technically an event that happen. NPCs that you see walking around and can talk to, those are events. When you move from one map to another, that's done through events. Opening doors, opening chests, any kind of object you see in an RPG Maker game is ostensibly an event, if you can interact with it. There are also some ways of using events that are not, what you would expect. They're not the usual way you would use events, and when you start using events in these interesting and very strange ways, they can become very powerful in helping you do things that you otherwise aren't able to do because of limitations with the mapping system. We'll talk about that when we get into bridges. That's a long ways away. It's like episode 14, I think, if I remember the way I have it planned out. So we'll be talking about how you can use events to do mapping, because that is something you can do, and it gives you some really powerful tools for tying that into cutscenes, which is another thing we'll talk about. Cutscenes in RPG Maker are entirely evented, and we'll have a series of, like a mini series of episodes dedicated to that kind of stuff. Dealing with cutscenes. So let's go ahead and create an event here. So all the events stuff we're working on will be in this one project. So I'll be updating, essentially uploading an updated version of this to the GitHub repository for this tutorial series. So instead of having like one individual repository for each tutorial, like we did with the plugins, it'll all just be in one, and this will get updated as I release new videos. So we're just gonna rename this map real fast. Let me go and turn on database focus so we can get a better idea of this window here. I don't care about, well, maybe we do care about the display name. Event basics. That's what we'll call this. And we don't have any encounter stuff over, but I'm still going to put encounter stuff to 0. Alright. Oh, actually I created a new one. Whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to edit the existing map. Steam doing its thing there. You gotta be careful when you're tabbing through the input forms, input fields in RPG Maker MV. If you hit the tab button, then hit shift too soon after, there's some sort of delay with Steam's overlay with this software for some reason, and it'll actually pick it up as a shift tab, which opens up the overlay. Something just to be aware of. Okay, put this back down to 0, everything else is fine. Okay, there we go. Okay, so in order to create an event, you'll first need to be in the event mode, which is what this icon signifies. This is for mapping, this is for eventing. In the event mode, every cell of the map can become an event, except for the one that your player character icon is on, if there is one for the player's starting position. Also, this is the most important, one of the most important event types, which is the player start position. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But in order to create an event, you can just click on any cell, you can double click, and it opens up the event editor. As you can see now, we have an event on this cell. That's what this square represents as an event. If you give it an image, it'll have that sprite image in it. So if we make this another Herald, you'll see that now it has Herald sprite in there. Or if you give it some other kind of sprite, like a switch, it'll be that there. So this kind of gives you an idea of what if there is a sprite, what that sprite is, and what the event might be for. Now there might be times when you don't have a sprite on an event for different various reasons. There are a lot of them why you wouldn't, and it would just look like this. So part of identification of events is why I heavily suggest you name your events. So you can see the name down here in the bottom corner, kind of. The window's a little low there. There, you can see it better now. Down here in this corner where my mouse is down here. That is your event name right there. So if you name this event, you can find that there just by looking at the bottom of the window, editor window. Let's call this event NPC1. So, and you can see it changed the name down there. And also, you can see the coordinates of where the cell is located. 7.5. So that's 7y5x. And then also you can see your map ID, map name, and the map size down here, as well as the zoom amount. Some additional tips if you're looking for that kind of information, it's all down there. In the event editor, we kind of went over this in that video, episode 2 of the plugin tutorial series. We're gonna recover it here because needs to be recovered. We need to go back over it. So this is the editor window for events. You can see we have our contents here, which is all the event commands go into here that you can do. They get added into here. You have the conditions under which an event page will run. And this whole thing is an event page here. This is the sprite image, the movement for the sprite, if there should be movement, the options for the sprite, then the priority, so where the trigger is for, or rather the display level for the event. We'll talk about that in a bit. And then the trigger, which is how do you interact with this event. So that's all an entire page on an event. An event set pages. So we're on page 1. If we create a new event page, we're on page 2. Something very important to be aware of is that event pages are processed right to left, not left to right. So page 2 will get processed before page 1. So if page 2 has no conditions on it, page 2 will always run, and you'll never reach page 1 because this will always be run. So keep that in mind. If you have any, if you have like a default event page that an event should be unless there's like a switch that's been set, or there's a variable value or something like that that you can set here in the conditions. That should always be on page 1. Otherwise, you want to override the always do this page when there is something to use for a condition. The other thing I suggest is if you're working with a cutscenes that happen in a map. So let's say you have a single map and you have multiple cutscenes that happen at different points. Name your events something that will tell you what cutscene it belongs to. That way you know, okay, this version of this event belongs to cutscene 1. I need the one that belongs to cutscene 2 to do this extra stuff I want to put in. So like, if we were going to make this part of a cutscene, I would probably say like CS1 or something like that. Or maybe some sort of like note, like a note of what, like, short name for the cutscene or something. Just to kind of differentiate this from another version of this NPC that might be on the same map. Otherwise, you kind of have to look through this and figure out what it belongs to and where it's at, and then, realize, oh, this is maybe not the right one that I need the other one. Naming things properly and descriptively will save you a lot of time, especially when you get to more complex stuff. So we have these 2 pages here. So let's actually, I want to check something really fast. Let's go over what all this stuff is. So, what are these condition options? So, a switch is excuse me. A switch is basically a like a light switch, if you want to think of it that way. It's either on or it's off, and when it's on, let's say we have switch 1, and let's say this is like opened chest or something. So like, let's say we have a treasure chest somewhere in the map, and when the player opens it, we want to turn on this switch to make an NPC do something different. And actually, we wouldn't put it here, we put it on page 2, so let me go over there and put it there. So open chest. Now, whenever this switch is turned on, this page will execute. So this page will be the one that will be processed. If this switch is turned off, then it'll process page 1, because page 1 has no conditions, and the conditions for page 2 aren't true or don't match when this is turned off. When this switch is turned on, then this will run. It won't run page 1. So you have 2 switch options here. It's pretty limited. There are going to be times, probably quite often, where you have more than 2 switch conditions you want to deal with. Some people, well, maybe not some, maybe a lot of developers use a variable, like a game state variable, that essentially controls, sets where the player is in the story or in your game, if you have like a singular storyline to worry about. You don't have to have any kind of weird offshoot things anywhere. It's not like a bunch of side quests and things like that, it's just the main story. They'll use a game variable to track a value, and then if that value is above a certain number, you can say that that's, you're at this particular point in the game, and have a bunch of things that'll happen based on that number. I mean, it works, but it's also very simplistic, and it doesn't allow you to do a whole lot either. Even when you combine it with switches, there's still going to be a lot of times if you're making a complex game where you're going to run into situations where you don't have enough conditional handling to really do what you want to do. There are plugins that help with that, like Yanfly's advanced switch plugin, which allows you to essentially write an if statement. Like, say if switch 1, 2, and 3 are on, then this switch that you've created that is checking the state of those other switches then becomes true, and then this page would run. But that's, there's nothing out of the box that's not like a third-party plugin that would allow you to do that. That's like a hard limitation of the editor. one of those, if you remember, if you watched my episode 2 of my plugin tutorial videos, this is one of those pesky, hard-coded limitations that make no goddamn sense whatsoever. They just decided, oh, we're going to limit you to 2 switches and only 2 switches. We're going to make the variable only be checked as a greater than or equal to a certain number. In XP, you actually could change this sign to be whatever you wanted it to be. So you could do like an equals or less than, a greater than. This one's only greater than or equal to. And then we have these other switches. Cell switches are really important for certain types of events, so we'll talk about those in a later video. Then you have item and actor. I mean, these could be used, but you can also use a conditional branch over here to also do the same thing. So these last two can be utilized in some situations, but I think they're not very usable in my opinion. They probably should have left those out and just gave us 2 more switch options. But it is what it is. For the note box, this just gives you a place to type in some notes. Some plugins will use this for things like lighting plugins usually use this for scripting for event-based lights. So there are some plugins that will utilize that. I usually, unless I'm using a plugin for something, I usually don't use that field for anything. One, it's like really tiny, like you can't put anything like note-wise, you can't really put in there. It's too small to handle information like that. But it is similar to the note box from the database. Then we have our buttons up here. So a new page creates a new event page. You can copy an event page and everything on it to another new one. So essentially you could say like, I want to have this, and then I want to say, I want to have all this stuff here, but then I want to have an extra switch that I want to have turned on. And we're going to say like, say talked to Morty. So if we have opened the chest, and if we've talked to the Morty NPC, this page will run instead of this page. And copying and pasting is an easy way just to copy over like a series, configuration of a page to another page. If you just want to add in an extra, condition or something without having to reset everything over here. So it's a really useful tool. You then have delete event page, which allows you to essentially erase an event page, and clear event page will remove everything and return this to like a default state. So that's the main editor window. Now to add in things that you'll make the NPC do, you'll need to double click over in here, or you can click once and hit enter. It'll open up this command window as well. So these are all the event commands. You got 3 pages of them. They all do different stuff. So the message window will do different things relating to messaging. So show text will pop up the text box and show the player dialogue and stuff like that. Show choices will allow you to show selection options to your player for them to select, and you can control where it'll show up at. There are some plugins that do some interesting things with this as well. This is what the dialog box looks like for show text. You got your face sprite, the text enter position and background preview. So let's say like, and you can look at the preview for it. Put in a face. You can see that there. I think this will also, if you go too far over the edge, I think it'll also show that the text gets cut off, so you can use the preview to see if your text fits or not. And if it doesn't, then you can adjust it. The other thing that's really important is batch entry. So this is really important when you're working with cutscenes, or at least like for NPCs that have a lot of dialogue. What batch entry allows you to do is it allows you to enter in 4 lines of text, and then when you hit enter, it allows you to continue adding in lines of text. Important thing to note here is that every show text window, unless you have a plugin that modifies it, is 4 lines long. So if you're using a plugin like Yanfly's Message Core plugin to like show character names and stuff using like I believe it's this, and you have like the name here, and you want that to be shown, you want that on the window throughout the entirety of the conversation, you'll need to make sure you're counting the rows that you have, and on every fourth one you're adding this in to add the name back into the next window. Now, what happens when you don't have this turned on and you hit enter after the fourth one is you lose all of your dialogue. Well, you don't lose it all, but it will it'll essentially save the window there. Come on. Keep forgetting space to open up for edit. If you double click it, it'll just bring up another thing to add something. So yeah, that's a good thing to mention. If you double click on this, you would think it would open up the edit for this particular command, but it doesn't. It opens up the event commands pane again. So what you want to do is you want to right click on it and hit edit, or you can just hit the space bar with it selected to bring it up to edit it. If you have other text here, be really careful not to uncheck this, because if you do, it's going to remove everything after the fourth one. So if you're going to be using the batch entry, make sure you never uncheck this if you've got more than 4 lines of text. So we're going to put this in. Let's go ahead and remove this, delete that event page. So I'll go ahead and give this NPC an event. Let's do this. Alright, so that's for, and if we hit OK, you can see now that we have the sprite there. That's show choices and show text. You have input number, allows the player to input a value, and that value will be stored in a game variable. So if you want to like create like a safe event or something like that, where they have to have a certain number to enter to open it, or some kind of lock or something like that, that's how you would do this. With that, you have select item, so you have the player choose an item, and then when they do that, it'll store that item ID in the variable that you designate here, and you pick the item type that they will pick from. Note about item types, you cannot add item types. Once again, it's a limitation of the editor that doesn't make any sense. So you only have regular items, key items, and these hidden items. So if you have like a custom item type from a plugin, you won't necessarily be able to use it through this. If it's if you have some, well, you might be able to. You have to set up as a regular item, and then, but that might cause problems. Like if the plugin says you need to make the items be hidden so that they don't get acted upon or something like that, it could get messy, in terms of like how things work. That's what that does. And then show scrolling text allows you to set up like a text scrolling, hence the name. So you can put in a whole bunch of text here. You have the ability to fast forward or to deny the player to be able to fast forward. You have the speed the window will scroll at, and then you have the preview for that. So I just put in a bunch of this so you can kind of see how this works. Oh, it's not going to actually scroll it. Interesting. It's not actually scrolling the window. That's kind of weird. It's supposed to scroll it automatically. So then now you have game progression stuff. So this is where you can these are the things you use to like control what's happening and how things execute. So control switches allows you to set up a switch or a range of switches to be turned on and off based on whatever you're doing with the event. So like if you're talking to an NPC, and by talking to that NPC, other NPCs change their dialogue or certain things should happen, you would turn on that switch or that series of switches, and then those things could be found or would happen. And that's what this allows you to do. You can also turn switches back off as well. Control variables allows you to set up a variable and populate it with a value. You can also use a script to do stuff as well. This is not like a script box, it's the single line, so it's a little bit harder to use in terms of like coding. But you can actually do coding things in here. You can even call functions and things from plugins to do stuff with. Game data allows you to pick a number of things. Note that anything you can do that's not script, but any of these other options are all going to be integers. Technically, game variables are only supposed to store a number, but you can actually store whatever you want to in these. But just be aware that if you do that, you need to handle them in a custom way using a script or script box or something. None of these control variables or control variable options will work with a non-integer, non-number game variable value. Just something to be aware of. Self switch allows you to manipulate those self switches. You have 4 of them. You can turn them on and off. These are really useful for dealing with events that run themselves to make sure that they stop running after a certain point. And then control timer. I'd never used this before. I've only used plugins because this is pretty limited. This allows you to start a timer, and I mean, I don't exactly know how this specifically works. Like if it's a countdown and if it actually does anything, or let me see, is there a tooltip for this? Starts or stops the timer. So I think this is like a single timer that you can't do multiple ones, and I think it shows it on the screen potentially. I don't think it has any way of like interacting, like if it once the timer hits 0, for example, if that means something happens, I think it just starts a timer. Again, I've never used it, so I don't exactly know how it works. That's something I'll need to look into for a future video. Flow control. So this is stuff for processing in events. There's some really interesting stuff in here with labels, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But you have conditional branches. Conditional branches allow you to set up essentially if, else conditions. So essentially you can say if the player has, 50 gold, do this, or if they don't, do this other thing. So like if you have an NPC that's asking the player for an item, you can use this to check to see if they have that item, and then if they don't, you can have the NPC roast them. You can use switches for these, game variables, cell switches, timers. Oh, there's one for timer. Never mind. Okay, so there is an option here for timers. So I guess you would set the timer up, and then you would use a conditional conditional timer option to then say if the timer is such and such, would do this thing. Okay, yeah, but that does mean that you can only have one timer, because there's no way to define that or to separate that timer from this event from another event. So this sets like a global timer. On this page, you have a bunch of actor stuff, so like you can choose the actor, and then they're in the party, what's their name, their class, etc. You have enemies, so like this could be used during a battle. We'll talk about that in a later video. Battle, troop eventing. You have characters facing down. If they're facing a certain direction, you or another NPC, or whatever direction a vehicle is facing. Then you have some other things here for like if you have a particular piece of equipment or something in your inventory, if it's equipped, or you can include equipment with that. There's a button, so you can check to see if they're holding down a particular button out of this list, which you can't change. You got script here as well, gold items. So there's a lot of things you can use for these, and then if you click on this, it'll create an else branch that you can then use to either just have a opposite scenario that happens if the condition is false, or you can use that to create an else if branch. And the way else ifs work in RPG Maker is you essentially have an if thing here, you have your else branch here, and then you just create another conditional branch inside of that. So it stacks and nests like this. It's not very good because you can end up with really huge nested if blocks, but that's just the way that's the way it works in RPG Maker. And I don't think that the developers are unlazy enough to ever fix that. But what it should be if, else if, else if, else if, else. As opposed to being if, else, if, else, if, else, if, else, if, else. It would just look a lot cleaner in here and be a lot easier to manage, but instead we have to deal with the Russian nesting doll equivalent of eventing conditional branches. So that's what those all do. So loops, just like in programming, a loop is something that runs over and over again until you stop it. So in this case, a loop in an event is kind of like a do-while loop in a while loop in programming that has no condition to stop it, which is why we have break loop. So break loop is used to stop the loop. So if you want to have a situation where you have a series of dialogue options that are like maybe like lore or something, they're like reading through a book or talking to an NPC that has a lot of information about different topics, and you want to have the player be able to continue talking with the NPC without having to interact with it, you can use a loop to essentially bring them back to a particular point in the NPC's dialogue. And then once they're done, or choose the option that says they're done, you can use break loop to stop it, and then the NPC will, the event context will end. Exit event processing does the same thing, so you can use this at any point in an event to close the event. Common event is a really powerful option here. This allows you to call a common event, and common events essentially are events that are global to the game and can be called from anywhere. So think of common events as like functions in plugins and plugin development. Say you have a bunch of events that do similar things. You just can take that eventing out of those events, stick it into a common event, and call the common event from those events. And now you have only one place you need to modify that event code at, or the event commands at, as opposed to 5 places in various parts of your game. It's like if you have like a bunch of, let's say, like slot machines or something, or mini games that are throughout your game world. Highly recommend you use a common event to handle the processing for those, because otherwise, if you want to make a change, you have to go to each one of those individually and change them, which gets very annoying. Now, labels are really interesting. I don't know how much they're used these days by eventers, but by game developers. But they were like a huge staple of like RPG Maker XP. And what these are, essentially, it's a way to say if, like, what we can do with this is say, say we have a conditional branch. If a switch is turned on, I want a certain thing to happen, but I want to keep it I want to keep my event a bit cleaner, so I want to take that event, the event commands that would happen in that if statement, and move them somewhere outside of the if statement so they're not jammed in there and look bad. So what you can do is use a label to say, okay, at this point, this is where these things go. So like we could do this, for example. So let's say if switch 1 is turned on, we'll do an else branch. So let's say we have this here, and let's say we have this here, and this will be let's say we have that, right? So we have these two different things. This is a very kind of simple example of this, but let's say we don't want to do this because it kind of looks a little bit weird, and maybe it doesn't look as clean as you would want it to be. So we want to move these somehow, but how would we do that and still make this work? Well, we could use a label. So we're going to go ahead and create a label. We're going to say, I'm just going to say condition branch 1 true. You can name these whatever you want to. And then what I can do is take this, move this down to here, remove this, and then we'll create another label called condition branch 1 false. Copy this down there, get rid of this. Now what we can do is we can do a jump to label, and then we type in the name. I wish this was like a selection of the labels in the event, but apparently that would be too useful. So you have to type in the name. And then put this down here, rename that to false. So what will happen now is, if chest open chest is on, it'll go to this jump to label, and then we'll come down to here. And then what you have to do though is you have to have another label to go to a thing, or you need to add this exit event processing. And so what will happen is, if you do a jump to label, it'll just continue processing after whatever's here is done. You know, if there's a label below it, it doesn't matter, it'll do whatever's below that label too, because the label just takes you to a place, it doesn't stop the event from running. So you would need, it's just one of the few places I would use this exit event processing command, which is in this situation where I'm using event labels like this. So essentially you have your true branch, it runs this dialog, then when you close the dialog window, the event stops running. If it's false, it'll run this window, and then likewise stop running the event. So that's what those could be used for. And again, we'll go into more detail with the proper examples of this stuff in later videos in this series. Comments just allow you to create a comment. Doesn't interact. The event doesn't interact with it at all. It's a way just for you to put something here if you want to make a note of something. I don't use it that often, but people do use it occasionally. Party. So over here, the party options. So you can give yourself more gold. You can change the items in your inventory. You can change weapons that are equipped on, or change you can give yourself weapons and stuff in your party inventory. You can change your armor as well. So you can remove or add armor, and then you can also add or remove party members with this option here. So initialize means you're going to set them to their base stats and level in the database. If this is not turned to true, so let's say that you have, in your game, let's say you have situations where certain party members leave your party for a while, and then come back. When they come back, you don't want to check this, because whatever levels and stuff they've gained, you want to retain for when they come back to your party. If you check this, when they come back to your party, they'll reset, essentially. So you'll lose everything, the player will lose everything that they've done with that character. So, very important that unless this is the first time a character is coming to your party, to leave this unchecked. Then you have actor things over here, so you just can change all kinds of different things about certain actors. So you choose your actor. You can have it, set up for a variable that'll have the ID for the actor, and you can change these parameters in various ways. So there's change HP, MP, and TP. You can change the state, recover all, essentially like a full heal kind of thing. Change EXP, change level parameters, skills, equipment, you name it. You can change the name, all this kind of stuff. So on page 2 we have some other different commands. In the first section we have movement commands. So the very first one here, transfer player, this sets up a map transfer. These would be the most common events you'll be using in RPG Maker. They allow you to essentially set up a cell that when the player walks on top of it, they'll be moved to a different map. So you use these to go into buildings. Anytime you go to a new map, whether it's like in a building to a different outside map, you get transported somewhere by an event or in a cutscene or something, you're using a player transfer to do it. Or a transfer player to do it. You can fade them. You can fade the fade out or fade out to black or white, or you can do none, which allows you to do some interesting stuff. You can change the direction the player will be facing when they move into the new map. And then you can also have designation of the map and ID, the ID of the map and the XY coordinates through game variables, if you have some sort of system you're doing with that. Or you can just choose a place using this location selection dialog box here. So vehicle location, same thing as transfer player, but for a vehicle. And event location, which allows you to move events around. Oh, interesting. I just realized something, which is I didn't know this existed. I made a whole, in my game, I have a whole scripted system for doing this exact thing. And this might have saved me a lot of time. Granted, there's some other things I'm doing with it that kind of I can't do with this, but some of the more simplistic stuff, just like switching an event with another event. Yeah, interesting. That would have been nice to know about. Oh well. Scroll map allows you to move the map around. So, well, more precisely, move the viewport of the map around. So, if you want to have the map scroll somewhere to focus on a particular thing and a location, like you have a player say, "Hey, look at that thing over there." You have the map scroll to the location to show the thing that the NPC said to look at. So that's what this is used for. I think you have to... I don't think it returns automatically. It might. No, I think you have to bring it back then. Yeah, I don't think it automatically returns. So you might have to like use that twice in that case. Set move route. So this is something you'll use extensively. I recommend you get Yanfly's move route core plugin or something similar that allows you to do scripting for these, because this can get really tedious really fast. So what the move route system is, it allows you to set up a route that the NPC will move along. And how that works is you essentially put in these move commands. So like if I say move down 4 times, then the NPC is going to move down on the map 4 times. If I say move lower right, it's going to go to the diagonally to the bottom right from where it ends up at. You can also change, have it change direction. You can have it take a step forward, a step back. Like, for example, if you want to have, like, during a cutscene, an NPC kind of walking backward away from something, you could use 1 step backward. As opposed to, well, it's 1 step backward, but what it does is it combines different things together. Like, normally what you would do to make this happen without this option would be to turn on direction fix, which means that as an NPC moves, it doesn't change where it's looking at, and then do a move down. Instead, you can do a move 1 step backward, and it'll move backward without having to turn this on, then turn it back off again when you're done with it. Now, if you have that Yanfly plugin or one like it, what you can do is you can use the script command to do all this with simple one-line statements. In the case of Yanfly, I can just say, like, move down 4. Or something like that. I think the syntax is wrong, but essentially it boils down to something like this. And what'll happen is that instead of doing down 4 times, I just have to do this one line and it'll do that. So it allows me to make this a lot more compact and a lot more manageable. You still will have to use some of these for some of the other things, but in terms of just basic directions, it's pretty good. You also have options with the Yanfly's plugin to set up like a move to a cell location on the map, so like an XY coordinate, which is useful when you don't want to, when you want the NPCs just to move and not have to worry about choreographing every single step that an NPC takes, because then you have to do the same thing with the player, because the player could do whatever and might block the NPC from being able to move. So instead, if you just say, okay, move to this XY coordinate, the plugin will calculate the route and then recalculate it as the NPC is moving, in case something gets in its way, and it'll be able to move around things. It's a really powerful plugin, and would highly recommend it. So some of the other things you can do here is you can do a jump. Basically just makes the NPC appear to be jumping from one cell to another. You have turn toward the player, turn away from the player. You have turn at random. You can turn switches on and off with this. You can change the speed that the NPC moves at and the frequency that it will change direction and go in a different route or a different direction if it's set to move randomly. You can turn on and off the walking animation, stepping animations here. You can turn on and off direction fix. Through allows an NPC to move through an object, through a solid object without colliding with it. Transparent makes the NPC sprite transparent. You can change the sprite image that's being used. the one thing that's annoying with this is you can't change like an individual thing. So like if you have like a, let's say you have like a, let's say there's one in here somewhere, there has to be. Let's say you have like a torch, right? That you want to be using. And you want to switch it to one of these, right? You can't just select this and then select that. You have to select the entire thing and then change the particular direction it's moving in to change the state of the thing. So there are limitations to this that are really annoying. They were at one point considering adding in like being able to select individual cells of sprite cells, but they eventually decided that even though everyone in their ant was asking for them to implement it, that nobody wanted it, so they didn't do it. Pissed a lot of people off. So you then have opacity, which allows you to like fade a sprite out a little bit, so you can make like a ghost looking like sprite as opposed to making it fully transparent. And then we have blend mode, which allows you to do some interesting like visual things, kind of like in Photoshop kind of stuff. Blend mode. I haven't really used this that much. We'll have to figure out how to use that in a thing eventually here. And then we also have like play sound effect and script. The script button in there. And that's the move routes system there. Get on and off vehicle, so you can just have your player get on and off the vehicle with them automatically through an event. Character, so character transparency. So this is for this event. So if you're not using the move route, you still want to change transparency, you can use that here. Change player followers, so you can essentially turn on the caterpillar is what it's called. So when you, in RPG Maker, you have a thing called a caterpillar. And what that is essentially is that you can have your party members following you around behind you. And you can turn that on and off with this. So if you want to have a situation where you want to have the party members, suck into you or something, or are moved for a certain thing, you can use this to do that. I would recommend only turning this off and on when you are faded out, so that you don't just magically poof people out of existence or into existence. If you want to do it that way, what I would suggest is doing an evented system to essentially manipulate the, and I'll show you how to do this. This is the complex as hell thing that I wrote that I mentioned earlier with the event location thing. But essentially what the system I made does, it allows me to essentially do the suck-in machinima, FS7 machinima bridge kind of thing, where you have your party members get sucked into you when you want to remove the caterpillar, and then you can also have them be blown out of you when you want them to be present for cutscenes and stuff. So there's ways to use this in really interesting ways. Gather followers allows you to bring the followers to your character, I believe. Same position as the character, yeah. So what you could do then is combine these two together, gather followers, do a little bit of a wait or something, and then use this to turn off the followers as well. So there is a way to do some things, but this is still pretty hokey, that kind of thing. Show animation, you can run a particular animation, and this is like a battle animation on the map with this. So you can use this for like cutscene effects and things. Balloon icons can be used to show stuff over the player or over an NPC. So if you're talking to an NPC and you want the NPC to react to what your player has chosen to say, you can use this to do that. And you have a set number of things you can use. There's some easier to find ones, but there's only a limited number of those. So like you could essentially put in your own ones of these if you wanted to. But you have a selection of those to use for like emoting through the button, through the balloon icon. And then you have erase event, which allows you to essentially remove the event. It doesn't remove it forever, but it removes it in this current instance of the map. So when you leave a map and come back to it, you're essentially reloading the map as it was. Erase event is a way to get events off the map, but they come back when you come back unless you force them to be hidden. So whenever you want to erase an event, my recommendation is to use a self switch. So essentially turn a self switch on, then erase after you erase the event or before you do, so that it will you can hide it when they come back in. Yeah, it even says it on the tooltip there. So pictures. This allows you to show and deal with pictures. Just, literally select an image from your resources and display it on screen. Use this for like title cards and other things. Pretty powerful, pretty useful for certain applications. Timing, so this allows you to set up a wait, which just means that the event will stop processing for a bit of time. Usually you would use these for things where you need to let a little bit of time pass before something happens. Like if you say push a button and you want to have a little bit of time wait before the payoff for pushing that button, you use a wait for that. You might also use waits for dealing with complex move routes with different events and allowing things to get to where they need to be before you continue. That'd be another reason to use a wait. Screen stuff, so this allows you to do different things with the screen, so you can fade the screen out or in. You can tint the screen, so you can make the screen go darker or brighter, or any number of different effects. You can do flashing on the screen, so you can make the screen flash certain colors. You can shake the screen, and then you have this weather effect. So basically these are like cutscene things here. Then you have a bunch of audio video things, so you can play music, background music, fade it out. You can, I don't know what does save do? Saves the current BGM. I don't know what that actually does though. Oh, okay, so you can save the current BGM, and then if you have to fade it out and change it, you can go back to what was there already, the previous BGM that was playing. Is that really useful? I'm not sure. You can do background sounds, music effects, sound effects, and then you also have the option to play movies. I forget what the format of the movie has to be. I think it has to be AVI to play, and it has to be a certain resolution, I think, too. There are plugins that allow you to do movies, play video files in games much easier than that. So, and then the last set of commands here is for a lot of system-related things. So we have battle processing, shop processing, so you can start a battle from this. Using this, you can open up a shop using that. Name input processing, so you can allow your player to name their character with that. You can open up the menu screen, the save screen from an event. You can do a game over from an event, return from title screen from an event. A bunch of system stuff here, so you can change the battle background, music, the victory, music effect. You can change the defeat music effect, vehicle, save access, so you can essentially turn off or on the ability to save, and the ability to open up the menu with those. You can change the encounter system. You can change formation access, so you can disallow them to use the formation options. You can change the window color, actor images, and vehicle images from here. So a lot of technical things here. Up here you have some map stuff, so you can change the map display name, you can change the tile sets, the battle back, parallax, and the location. You can get location info. So what this can be used for is, let's say I want to get the ID of this event, and I want to store it into this variable. And I want to store the current location of this in that variable. You can use that to do that. And then you can use this variable for things as well. Or you can just get the X, Y into separate individual locations. There's easier ways to do this. I think in one of these options is a way to get the location of the current event. I think it's in set variable. I'm pretty sure it's in set variable, so this is kind of a more hokey way to do this. But you can use this to get like specific location info. Like if you have like something on the map that you want to have this event do something with, like the coordinates or something for that particular thing, you can use that to get those. Then we have all the battle commands. These will be used in troop processing mostly. So change enemy HP, MP, TP. Kind of similar to like the player ones on the first page. Then you have enemy appear, so you can actually make a hidden enemy appear, transform to make the enemy change to something else. Show battle animations, force actions. So if you want to set up a situation where you want to force an enemy to do certain things when getting hit with certain things, you can set up a force action, like counterattack, using that. And then you have this option to abort the battle to finish it. So exit out of the battle. Then you have the script. The script command is very powerful. You can do lots of stuff with that. It's just straight up JavaScript in an event, though there are some limitations. And then you have the plugin command, which allows you to call plugin commands from plugins to do stuff with. So that is the reintroduction to the eventing system for RPG Maker MV. In the next video, we'll actually create a basic event and some basic events and show you how some of the stuff works. And then as we go through each one of these, they'll get more and more complex. This will probably end up being the longest video out of the series, just because we went through over everything again. And we'll talk more about like the priority and the trigger and stuff and on videos to come. But that's gonna be it for this one, so thanks for watching. Comments, questions, leave them below. And if you would like to see a specific thing covered, like if you want to know how to make do something in events, let me know in the comments, and I will, if I don't already have it in the list of episodes, and I think it'd be really useful for people to know about how to do, I'll create a video for it, we'll make an episode for it, that particular topic, and put it in the lineup. So in this one, you, the viewer, have some control over what we're going to be doing with these. Because there is a lot of things you can do in events, and I'm not going to be able to think of everything. So, and there's very specific things people would like to do probably, and don't necessarily know how to do them, and be interesting to like go through and actually, do examples of those for people that are looking for those specific things. Yeah, so I will see you for the next one. Till then, this is LMP Games, and I will see you guys later.